You didn't become fiercely independent because you were born strong. You became this way because, at a terrifyingly young age, you made a silent calculation. If I just stop needing things, maybe I'll stop being a burden. There's a version of you that skipped a step everyone else got to take. You compare your life to everyone else's without meaning to, clocking who's more put together, who figured it out faster, who moves through the world lighter than you do. You catch yourself feeling like everyone got a manual for growing up, and yours arrived early, unsigned, incomplete, and that envy comes laced with shame. None of that is vanity. It's evidence. Somewhere back there, a clock started running for you long before it should have. If part of this is already describing your childhood, stay right here. What we're about to walk through is something most people carry their whole lives and never once get to name. Today we're going all the way back to that clock, to the exact moment childhood ended early, and why part of you has been running on adult time ever since. This isn't about blame. It's about finally understanding the version of you that had no choice but to grow up overnight. The version of you that had to grow up overnight. There's a particular kind of tired that sleep doesn't touch. You wake up already bracing, already scanning, already 3 steps ahead of a day that hasn't even started asking anything of you yet. People call you responsible, dependable, the one who has it together, and you nod, because the alternative is explaining something you don't have words for. That constant readiness has a name your body learned early. Hypervigilance. It didn't come from nowhere. It came from a childhood where relaxing was never quite safe. So let's go back for a second. Picture a house you knew well, maybe your own. There's a certain hour when the mood could tip, when a door closing too hard meant the whole evening was about to change. You learned to read the air before you understood the words. A parent's face, a tone through the wall, the weight of footsteps in the hallway. That wasn't paranoia. It was survival intelligence. A small person figuring out how to stay 1 step ahead of the storm. Here's what almost no one tells you. That hyper-awareness was brilliant. A child who can sense a shift in the room before it lands is a child protecting themselves the only way available. The problem isn't that you were too sensitive. It's that the alarm never got turned off. Decades later, your nervous system still treats a slow text reply like an incoming threat. And that's the thing about growing up too fast. The skills that saved you back then quietly started running your whole adult life. Think about how you handle needing something. When you're sick, do you tell anyone, or do you quietly ride it out and show up like nothing's wrong? When someone offers help, does your mouth say, "I'm fine," before your brain even votes? That reflex has a name too, hyperindependence, and it looks like strength from the outside. But underneath the "I've got it" is often a much older sentence. No one's coming, so don't bother asking. Difficulty asking for help isn't a character flaw. Go back again. There was probably a moment, you might not even remember it clearly, when you needed comfort and it didn't come. Maybe a parent was too overwhelmed, too absent, too busy holding their own world together. So you did the math a child shouldn't have to do. My needs make things harder, so I'll have fewer of them. That's premature responsibility in its purest form. You became your own caretaker before you'd finished being cared for. And a caretaker doesn't get to fall apart. This is where parentification enters the story. It's a real term from family psychology, and it describes what happens when a child is handed a role too big for them. Emotional support for a parent. Referee between adults, the steady one in an unsteady house. Sometimes it's practical. Cooking, bills, watching younger siblings. Sometimes it's emotional. Being someone's confidant, their reason to keep going. Either way, the child becomes an emotional caretaker, and they learn a quiet lesson that follows them everywhere. Love is something you earn by being useful. There was a girl who, at 9, learned to read her mother's silence like a weather report. When the house went quiet after dinner, she'd start cleaning. Not because anyone asked, but because being useful felt like being safe. She grew into an adult everyone leaned on, the friend who remembered everything, who never needed anything back. And she was exhausted in a way she couldn't explain. That chronic exhaustion wasn't laziness or weakness. It was the bill for a lifetime of holding a room together by herself. For years she thought this was just her personality, the helper, the strong one, the fixer. It never occurred to her that it was a role she'd been cast in before she could speak. The turning point wasn't dramatic. It was a small, strange grief that showed up one ordinary afternoon. A sense that she'd missed something she couldn't name. That missing something had a shape. It was a lost childhood, a whole stretch of being small that got skipped so someone else could stay standing. There's research that puts a frame around this. In 1998, Vincent Felitti and Robert Ander published the ACE study through the CDC and Kaiser Permanente, a landmark look at how childhood adversity shapes adult life. Thousands of people, one quiet finding. Early emotional overload leaves fingerprints that last for decades, showing up in the body long after the mind moved on. In other words, this isn't in your head. What you carry is real, measurable, and this part matters. It was never your fault to begin with. Naming it changes something. The moment you stop calling it my personality and start seeing it as adultification, a child pushed into grown-up shoes too early, the weight shifts. You're no longer defective. You're someone who adapted. But here's where it gets uncomfortable, because adaptation has a cost most people never track. That armor you built to survive one house? It doesn't come off when you leave. It walks into your relationships, your work, your rest, and it starts quietly deciding things you thought you were choosing freely. Watch how the armor shows up when someone gets close. There's a strange reflex where the moment things feel warm and steady, a quiet panic starts humming underneath. Not because anything's wrong, because nothing is, and you don't trust it. So you test. You pull back a little to see if they follow. You brace for the disappearance you're certain is coming. This is attachment theory playing out in real time. A child who learned love was unpredictable becomes an adult who can't fully rest inside it. Closeness feels less like safety and more like waiting. Go back to the door for a second. Somewhere in that house was a door that closed, a parent who went distant without warning, warm 1 hour and gone the next. You never knew which version would walk in, so you became a student of their moods, memorizing the signs, trying to earn back a closeness that kept slipping. A child can't make sense of sometimes, so they decide it's about them. If I'm good enough, they'll stay. That equation didn't dissolve when you grew up. It just found new people to run on. Here's the reframe that takes a minute to land. All that testing, that bracing, that pulling away first, it isn't sabotage. It's a small child still trying to control the one thing that once felt uncontrollable, whether love stays. Anticipating the abandonment lets you feel like you saw it coming, like you weren't blindsided again. It's protection wearing the mask of distance. And once you see that the fear was never proof you're unlovable, just proof you were once loved unreliably, something in the grip starts to loosen. Now look at how you take a compliment. Someone praises you, and you deflect it like it's on fire. Oh, it was nothing. Anyone could have done it. Someone tries to care for you and your whole system goes stiff, waiting for the catch. This is one of the loneliest parts of self-abandonment. You've gotten so used to giving that receiving feels almost threatening. Kindness with no invoice attached doesn't compute. Part of you is still bracing for the bill you learned always came due. Trace that back. In a house where affection was rationed, or came tangled with obligation, a child learns that being cared for isn't free. Maybe love arrived only after you performed, good grades, good behavior, being no trouble at all. Maybe warmth came with a debt attached, a look what I do for you. So you built a rule to stay safe. Don't want anything you might have to repay. That rule kept you from getting hurt. It also quietly locked the door on the exact thing you needed most. And this is where perfectionism moves in, because it's the same survival math wearing a nicer suit. If love had to be earned, then earning becomes everything. You redo the small thing until it's flawless. A minor mistake feels like a verdict on your entire worth. You measure the whole day by what you produced, and even a good day leaves you owing. Nobody sees the frantic machinery underneath the competence. They just see someone impressive and never guess how much fear is fueling it. Picture the child who got that lesson early. Maybe praise only landed when the report card was perfect, or the room was spotless, or the meltdown was swallowed. So a small person concluded, "I am loved for what I do, not who I am." That's the seed of both the perfectionism and the exhaustion, a belief that resting, being ordinary, taking up space without earning it first, is dangerous. And a child who believes their worth is conditional grows into an adult who can never quite clock out. Here's the tender truth underneath it. That relentless drive was never really about achievement. It was about safety. A child figured out that being impressive got them closer to being loved, and they've been running that program ever since, hoping this time it'll finally be enough. But it's a program with no finish line, because the approval you're chasing now was supposed to arrive unconditionally, decades ago, from people who couldn't give it. You've been trying to fill a childhood-shaped space with adult accomplishments, and the space just keeps echoing. Try this, not as a fix, but as an experiment. Next time you catch yourself over-explaining, over-apologizing, over-delivering, pause and quietly ask, who am I still trying to convince? Name the age you feel in that moment. Often it's not 34 bracing at your desk. It's 7, waiting for a nod that never came. That small act of noticing, this is old, this is the child, not the room I'm actually in, is the beginning of separating then from now. It won't feel like much at first. It's still the first real crack in the pattern. Because here's what the pattern was always protecting. Underneath the vigilance and the performing and the not needing sits a feeling so old you might mistake it for a fact about yourself. The fear of being a burden. It's the quiet engine behind almost all of it. The reason you shrink, apologize for existing, thank people twice, ask for nothing. It feels like humility. It isn't. It's a wound that learned to speak politely, and where that belief actually came from is something you were never meant to figure out alone. Where does a belief like "I'm a burden" actually get planted? Rarely through cruelty. More often through 1,000 small moments, a sigh when you needed something, a parent who visibly buckled under their own weight, a sense that your existence was one more thing on an already overloaded plate. You didn't get told you were too much. You absorbed it, and a child who feels like weight makes a quiet vow. I'll need less, take up less, be less. That vow kept the peace. It also erased you a little at a time. Notice what that erasing did to your own voice. When someone asks what you want, where to eat, what to watch, what you actually think, is there a blank where the answer should be? You've spent so long tuning into everyone else's needs that your own signal went faint. This is what living in fawning and people-pleasing does over years. It's not that you don't have preferences, it's that having them once felt unsafe. So you outsourced the wanting. You learned to find yourself only in the reflection of what others needed. Go back to the table one more time. Picture a child who learned that their real opinion could tip the mood, so they got good at reading which answer kept things calm, and gave that one instead. Over and over, until "what do you want" became a genuinely hard question. That wasn't weakness. It was a brilliant social calculation by someone who couldn't afford conflict. But a child who silences themselves to survive becomes an adult who forgot they had a voice at all, and then wonders why they feel unseen. Here's the quiet devastation and the quiet hope in the same breath. You were never actually gone. That self with real preferences, real anger, real wants, it didn't die. It went underground, where it was safe. Every time you feel that flicker of, "I don't know what I want," that's not emptiness. That's a locked door, and locked doors can be opened. The wanting is still in there, waiting for someone finally safe enough to ask. And for the first time, that someone gets to be you. This is where inner child work stops sounding like a soft cliché and starts being the actual mechanism of repair. Not a metaphor, a practice. Somewhere inside you is the version who grew up overnight, still holding the post they were assigned too young. Reparenting yourself means becoming the steady adult that child never reliably had. The one who says you don't have to earn rest. Your needs aren't too much. I've got it from here. It's slow. It feels awkward at first. But it's the one relationship that was missing all along. Try something concrete tonight. Find a photo of yourself young, 5, 6, 7, before the armor. Look at that face for a while. Then write that child one sentence. The thing you most needed to hear back then and never did, it wasn't your job. You were allowed to be small. None of it was your fault. It'll feel strange, maybe even silly, until suddenly it doesn't. Until something in your chest recognizes the voice it waited decades for. That's healing your inner child. Not a concept. A conversation you finally get to start. And here's what makes that conversation possible. Nervous system dysregulation. The part that keeps you wired and braced can actually be retrained. The same body that learned danger can learn safety through slow breath, through rest that you allow instead of earn, through moments of calm you don't immediately sabotage. Learning to rest isn't lazy. For you, it's radical, because rest was the one thing that never felt safe. Every time you let your guard down on purpose and nothing bad happens, you're teaching an old alarm a new truth. The storm is over. There's a grief that comes with all of this, and it deserves to be named. Reclaiming your childhood doesn't mean getting it back. You don't. It means finally mourning the one you didn't have. The birthdays where you were the grown-up. The nights you comforted someone instead of being comforted. Letting yourself feel that loss isn't self-pity. It's the door out. You can't set down a weight you won't admit you were carrying. And the moment you grieve it honestly, it stops being a secret that runs you from underneath. So what does the emotional numbness protect, really? That flat, faraway feeling, the not quite here, the watching your life from a slight distance. It was never coldness. It was a circuit breaker. When a child feels too much, too young, with no one to hold it, the mind does something merciful. It turns the volume down. The numbness saved you from drowning, but the same switch that dims the pain dims the joy, and part of coming back to life is letting yourself feel it all again, slowly, safely, on your terms this time. This is the self-compassion journey, and it's quieter than the internet makes it sound. It's not affirmations in the mirror. It's catching the harsh inner voice mid-sentence and asking, would I say this to that kid in the photo? It's letting a need exist without immediately apologizing for it. It's noticing the old script. I'm too much. I'm not enough. I should handle this alone, and choosing, just once, not to obey it. Each small refusal is you taking your childhood back one ordinary moment at a time. And it adds up to something that changes who you think you are. Because the version of you that had to grow up overnight was never the real problem. That child was the solution, the one who kept everything from falling apart. You don't owe that child more performance. You owe them rest. Everything you built to survive can finally become something you get to lay down. The vigilance, the fixing, the earning. They were love letters from a kid who didn't know another way to stay safe. And the day you stop reading them as flaws is the day you meet who you actually were, underneath all of it. None of this happens all at once, and that's worth knowing before you go looking for a finish line. There's no single morning you wake up healed, no clean before and after. It's smaller than that, and steadier. 100 quiet moments where you catch the old reflex and choose yourself anyway. The child who grew up overnight learned to survive in a single night. The adult gets to grow back down slowly, gently, over 1,000 ordinary days. And where that leaves you is somewhere you've never actually stood. There's something you do without realizing it, even now. When someone finally slows down enough to really see you, to ask how you are, and actually wait for the answer, you feel that old flicker of not knowing what to say. So here's my question for you tonight, and I hope you sit with it instead of rushing past. What did that child need to hear that no one ever said? Write it down. Say it out loud if you can. Because the work isn't out there, it's back there, and it's tender. Look at your own history with the courage you've spent your whole life offering everyone else. When did you first become the strong one? Whose weight did you pick up before you understood it wasn't yours? And what would it feel like, even for one afternoon, to set it down and just be small? You don't have to answer all of that today, but I'd love it if you left one thing in the comments. A single word to describe the child you used to be. Just one word. Watchful. Tired. Brave. Whatever surfaces first, trust it. There's a whole community below you that grew up the same way, and something quietly powerful happens when we stop carrying it in silence. Thank you, really, from the bottom of my heart, for staying all the way to the end of this. That you're still here says something about the part of you that's ready to come home. If any of this stayed with you, you don't have to do anything about it right now. Just let it be here. When you're ready to keep looking, this space will be waiting. You were never behind everyone else. You were just a child handed a clock that started running too soon, and you're allowed finally to let it stop. And so you sit with that clock, finally allowed to let it rest. But rest has a way of making room for questions you were too busy to ask. Because here's what nobody warns you about the child who grew up overnight. The growing up wasn't the whole story. Something else happened in that quiet. Something the adult you became learned to hide even from yourself. When no one comes back for a child, that child doesn't just get stronger. Part of them turns somewhere darker. And that part is still running things you blame on your personality. You've spent this whole time meeting the child who adapted, but there's another one, the one who got left. And what abandonment does to a person when it goes unnamed for decades, that's a room we haven't opened yet. The self-sufficiency, the walls, the way you sometimes go cold without deciding to, those aren't random. They're the fingerprints of something that happened in the dark. Recognizing the wound is one thing. Meeting what it turned you into is another.